History's biggest fraud. For 2.5 million years, humans fed themselves by gathering plants and hunting animals that lived and bred without their intervention. Homo erectus, Homo ergaster, and the Neanderthals plucked wild figs and hunted wild sheep without deciding where fig trees would take root, in which meadow a herd of sheep would graze, or which billy goat would inseminate which nanny goat. Homo sapiens spread from East Africa to the Middle East, to Europe and Asia, and finally to Australia and America. But everywhere they went, sapiens to continue to live by gathering wild plants and hunting wild animals. Why do anything else when your lifestyle fits you, amplifies and supports a rich world of social structures, religious beliefs, and political dynamics? All this changed about 10,000 years ago when sapiens began to devote almost of their time and effort to manipulating the life of a few animal and plant species. From sunrise to sunset, humans sow seeds, water plants, pluck weeds from the ground, and led sheep to bright pastures. This work they thought would provide them with more fruit, grain, and meat. It was a revolution in the way humans lived, the agricultural revolution. The transition to agriculture began around 9500 to 8500 BC in the hill country of southeastern Turkey with Western Iran and the Levant. It began slowly and in restricted geographical area. Wheat and goats were domesticated by approximately 9000 BC, peas and lentils around 8000 BC, olive trees around by 1000 BC, 5000 BC, horses by 4000 BC, and grapevines by 3500 BC. Some animals and plants, such as camels and cashew nuts, were domesticated even later, but by 3500 BC, the main work of domestication was over. Even today, with all our advanced technologies, more than 90% of the calories that feed humanity come from the handful of plants that our ancestors domesticated between 5000, 9500 and 3500 BC. Wheat, rice, maize, corn in the US, potatoes, millet, and barley. No noteworthy plant or animal has been domesticated in the last 2000 years. If our minds are those of hunter-gatherers or cuisine instead of ancient farmers. Scholars once believed that agriculture spread from a single Middle Eastern point of origin to the four corners of the world. Today, scholars agree that agriculture sprang up in other parts of the world, not by the action of Middle Eastern farmers exporting their revolution, but entirely independently. People in Central America domesticated maize and beans without knowing anything about wheat and peas cultivation in the Middle East. South Americans learned how to raise potatoes and llamas, unaware of what was going on either in Mexico or in the Levant. China's revolutionaries domesticated rice, millet, and pigs. North America's first gardeners were those who got tired of combining the undergrowth for edible gourds and decided to cultivate pumpkins. New Guineans tamed sugar cane and bananas, while the first West African farmers made African millet, African rice, sorghum, and wheat conform to their needs. From these initial focal points, agriculture spread far and wide. By the first century AD, the vast majority of people throughout most of the world were agriculturists. Why did agricultural revolutions erupt in the Middle East, China, and Central America, but not in Australia, Alaska, and South Africa? The reason is simple. Most species of plants and animals can be domesticated. Sapiens could dig up delicious truffles and hunt down woolly mammoths, but domesticating either species were out of the question. The fungi was too far elusive, the giant beasts too ferocious. Of the thousands of species that our ancestors hunted and gathered, only a few were suitable dead candidates for farming and herding. Those few species lived in particularly places, and those are the places where agricultural revolutions occurred. Scholars once proclaimed that the agricultural revolution was a great leap forward for humanity. They told a tale of progress, fueled by human brain power. Evolution gradually produced ever more intelligent people. Eventually, people were so smart that they were able to decipher nature's secrets, enabling them to tame sheep and cultivate wheat. As soon as this happened, they cheerfully abandoned the cruel, dangerous, and often Spartan life of hunter-gatherers, settling down to enjoy the pleasant, satiated satiated life of farmers. That tale is fantasy. There's no evidence that people become more intelligent with time. Foragers knew the secrets of nature long before the agricultural revolution, since their survival depended on an intimate knowledge of the animals they hunted and the plants they gathered. Rather than heralding a new era of easy living, the agricultural revolution left farmers with life generally more difficult and less satisfying than those of foragers. Hunters and gatherers spent their time in more stimulating and varied ways and were less in danger of starvation and disease. The agricultural revolution certainly enlarged the sum total of food at the disposal of humankind, but the extra food they did not translate into a better diet or more leisure. Rather, it translated into population explosions and pampered elites. The average farmer worked harder than the average forager and got a worse diet in return. The agricultural revolution was history's biggest fraud. Who was responsible? Neither kings, nor priests, nor merchants. The culprits were a handful of plant species, including wheat, rice, and potatoes. These plants domesticated Homo sapiens rather than vice versa. Think for a moment about the agricultural revolution from the viewpoint of wheat. 10,000 years ago, wheat was just a wild grass, one of many, confined to a small range in the Middle East. Suddenly, within just a few short millennia, it was growing all over the world. According to the basic evolutionary criteria of survival and reproduction, wheat has become one of the most successful plants in the history of the earth. In areas such as the Great Plains of North America, where not a single wheat stalk grew 10,000 years ago, you can today walk for hundreds upon hundreds of kilometers without encountering any other plant. Meanwhile, wheat covers about 2.25 million square kilometers of the closed surface, almost 10 times the size of Britain. How does the cross turn from insignificant to ubiquitous? We did it by manipulating Homo sapiens to its advantage. These apes have been living a fairly comfortable life, hunting and gathering until about 10,000 years ago, but then began to invest more and more effort in cultivating wheat. Within a couple of millennia, humans in many parts of the world were doing little from dawn to dusk other than taking care of wheat plants. It wasn't easy. Wheat demanded a lot of them. Wheat didn't like rocks and pebbles, so sapiens broke their backs clearing fields. Wheat didn't like sharing its space, water, and nutrients with other plants, so men and women labored long days waiting under the scorching sun. Wheat got sick, so sapiens had to keep a watch out for worms and blight. Wheat was attacked by rabbits and locust swarms, so the farmers built fences and stood guard over the fields. Wheat was thirsty, so humans dug irrigation canals or lugged heavy buckets from the well to water it. Its hunger even impelled sapiens to collect animal feces to nourish the crowd in which grew. The body of Homo sapiens had not evolved for such tasks. It was adapted to climbing apple trees and running after gazelles, not to clearing rocks and carrying water buckets. Human spines, knees, necks, ox paid the price. Study of ancient skeletons indicate that the transition to agriculture brought about a plethora of ailments such as slip discs, arthritis, and hernias. Moreover, the new agricultural tasks demanded so much time that people were forced to settle permanently next to their wheat fields. They completely changed their way of life. We did not domesticate wheat, we it domesticated us. The word domesticate comes from the Latin domus, which means house. Who's the one living in the house? Not the wheat, it's the sapiens. How did wheat convince Homo sapiens to exchange a rather good life for a more miserable existence? What did it offer in return? It did not offer a better diet. Remember, humans are omnivorous apes who thrive on a wide variety of foods. Grains made up only a small fraction of the human diet before the agricultural revolution. A diet based on cereals is poor in minerals and vitamins, hard to digest, and really bad for your teeth and gums. Wheat did not give people economic security. The life of a peasant is less secure than that of a hunter and gatherer. Foragers rely on dozens of species to survive and could therefore weather difficult years even without stocks and preserved food. If the availability of one species was reduced, they could gather and hunt more of other species. Farming societies have, until very recently, relied for the great bulk of their calorie intake on a small variety of domesticated plants. In many years, they relied on just a single staple, such as wheat, potatoes, or rice. If the rains failed, or clouds of locusts arrived, or if a fungus infected that staple species, peasants died by thousands and millions. Nor could wheat offer security against human violence. The early farmers were at least as violent as their voracious ancestors, if not more so. Farmers had small possessions and needed land for planting. The loss of pasture land to raiding neighbors could mean the difference between subsistence and starvation, so there was much less room for compromise. When a foraging band was hard-pressed by a stronger rival, it could usually move on. It was difficult and dangerous, but it was feasible. When a strong enemy threatened an agricultural village, retreat meant giving up fields, houses, and granaries. In many cases, this doomed refugees to starvation. Farmers, therefore, tended to stay put and fight to the bitter end. Many anthropological and archaeological studies indicate that in simple agricultural societies with no political frameworks, beyond village and tribe, human violence was responsible for about 50% of deaths, including 25% of male deaths. In contemporary New Guinea, violence accounts for 30% of male deaths in one agricultural tribal society, the Dani, and 35% in another, the Anga. In Ecuador, perhaps 50% of those Guaranis meet a violent death at the hands of another human. In time, human violence was brought under control through development of larger social frameworks, cities, kingdoms, states. But it took thousands of years to build such huge and effective political structures. Village life certainly brought the first farmers some immediate benefits, such as better protection against wild animals, rain, and cold. Yet, for the average person, the disadvantages probably outweighed the disadvantages probably outweighed the advantages. This is how people in today's prosperous societies to appreciate. Since we enjoy affluence and security, and since our affluence and security are built on foundations laid by the agricultural revolution, we assume that agricultural revolution was a wonderful improvement. Yet it is wrong to trust thousands of years of history from the perspective of today. A much more representative viewpoint is that 3 years ago dying from malnutrition in 1st century China because her further crops has failed. Would you say, I'm dying from malnutrition, but in 2000 years, people have plenty to eat and live in big air-conditioned houses, so my suffering is worthwhile a sacrifice. What then did which of the agriculturists, including malnourished Chinese, go? It offered nothing for people as individuals, yet it did bestow something on human sapiens as a species. Cultivating wheat provided much more food per unit of territory and thereby enabled Homo sapiens to multiply exponentially around 13,000 years BC, when people fed themselves by gathering wild plants and hunting wild animals. The area was the oasis of Jericho in Palestine could support at most one roaming band of about 100 relatively healthy and well-nourished people. Around 8,500 BC, when wild plants gave way to wheat plants, the oasis supported a large but cramped village of 1,000 people who suffered more from disease and malnourishment. The currency of evolution is neither hunger nor pain, but rather copies of DNA helices. Just as the economic success of a company is measured only by the numbers of dollars in its bank account, not by the happiness of its employees, so evolutionary success of a species is measured by the numbers of copies of its DNA. If no more DNA copies remain, the species is extinct, just as a company without money is bankrupt. If a species boasts many DNA copies, it is a success, and species flourishes. From such a perspective, 1,000 copies are always better than 100 copies. This is the essence of the agricultural revolution, the ability to keep more people alive under worse conditions. Yet, why should individuals care about this revolution calculus? Why would any sane person lower his or her standard of living just to multiply the number of copies of Homo sapiens genome? Nobody agreed to this deal. The agricultural revolution was a trap.